Hey, what's up, Raider Nation? It's officially game day, Monday Night Football. And one of the most exciting things about this game is not only the fact that they're playing against the Chargers, one of the biggest division rivals, but it's also a battle for first place in the AFC West.
Hey, there you are.
Hey, there you are. Yeah, we're together.
Hey, imagine that. Imagine that. Raider Nation, we're excited about this game. JPJ out, Alex Kappa in. How does that affect the offensive line?
This is going to be a fun time, Raider Nation. We're going to break everything down before this Monday night game. Important game against the Chargers. As Chantel and Q talked about, there's a chance for first place. When's the last time he said that? Ooh, frightening.
Raider Nation, it's time. This is the Raiders Squad. Everything Las Vegas Raiders every week. Covering all the big hits and game-changing plays from the Death Star in the desert. The way only the Locked On Podcast Network can. Commitment to excellence starts here. The Raiders Squad Show starts now.
Hey, what's up, Raider Nation? As you can see, a little bit smaller right now with our videos, but take a look at the side over there because that is also extremely important because that's what today's show actually looks like. And we want to say thank you so much for joining us today. If you like the content, hit that like and subscribe button. You can also follow us on our social media channels, and you'll see in the description below the ways that you can connect with us. And like I said, we do appreciate you, Raider Nation. We're actually one of the best squad shows on this platform. So we do appreciate you. And that's all because of you, Raider Nation. And remember, you can find us on the audio side as well. So wherever you find your shows and podcasts, we're there too. So if you got a couple of minutes, leave a rate and review, but it's a jam-packed show. We're going to get into a lot today. We're going to start off talking about the injury updates, but before we do that, we're going to break down Raiders-Chargers Monday Night Football at Allegiant Stadium. We're also going to be talking about the keys to victory for this game. What did the Raiders have to do to beat the Chargers on Monday Night Football? And also, later in the show, of course, we're going to talk about battle for first place in the AFC West. And it's funny because Link said it in the intro. When was the last time that we actually heard that, right? Which is crazy. I know it's just week 2, but it's still important. And at the final segment, Q and Link are going to be answering some of your questions. So if you have any questions for the guys, whether it's game related, please drop them in the comments because we'll get to them later on in the show. And guys, it's here, Monday Night Football. We've been waiting for this. Of course, we got to wait a little bit longer. So the anticipation is always, I don't know, I guess a little bit like we're just waiting for Monday night the whole entire weekend. And it's finally here.
I told you. It is a hard deal. You have to wait and wait and wait. And especially after you go through the entire day of football yesterday, including Sunday night, it's like, we're still waiting. And you still have another game before the Raiders play the Chargers tonight. So it's like, hurry.
It is going to be a late night. It's going to be a late night, but we're excited.
Yeah. That's 7 p.m. start. So for, the Raider haters on the East Coast, they'll probably be asleep, which is good for the Raider Nation. But nonetheless, guys, this is exciting because it is for a battle for first place, which we're going to get into later in the show. But I think we have to talk a little bit about the injury updates and some concerns, because I think the biggest question coming into this game is whether or not Brock Bowers is going to play, listed as questionable on the last injury update chart. Also, you have a guy like Jackson Powers-Johnson who is out with a concussion. They're saying that he is officially out. So Alex Kappa is going to be filling in for him. And Elandon Roberts actually went through his entire practice routine on Saturday. So good news there. But some concerns for the Raiders, right? Because let's start off with Brock Bowers. I don't know. Do you guys feel like he's going to go in this one? Because, we heard a lot of reports in that last game. He left the game. He was questionable to return. After the game, they were saying, no, he's fine. Like, pump your brakes, nothing to worry about. But he's still listed as questionable. Q, will go with you first. What are you hearing? Do you think we'll get to see him play?
Yeah, my gut feeling tells me he's going to go. That's just kind of what it is. I don't know how effective he's going to be. He's wearing a compression sleeve right now on his leg. We talked to him a couple times in the locker room last week, and then on Saturday as well after their final practice, which he did participate in. He was limited, and so it seems like he's going to give it a go. Seems like he's going to be at least comfortable enough to do that. But we'll see how effective he'll be. So I think that this is going to be a game where Michael Mayer is going to have probably a much bigger role because, again, Brock's going to be out there, but I don't think he'll be 100%. But it looks like he's at least going to give it a go. And him going out there and having practice, even in a limited capacity on Saturday, was a really good sign for tonight.
If you recall back in New England, the second half of the game, when you saw Brock after he came out after the injury, he was trying to do everything he possibly could to get back out on the football field, warm it up. That's what I expect. Now, where the coaching comes in and trainers come in is like, okay, we might have to be guarded. We need him for the rest of the season, not just this game. So you might want to, we'll call pitch count. Let's call it, the best way to do it, or a play count. You might want to say that's where Brock Bowers is going to be with maybe your 12 personnel, your 2 tight ends, maybe even possibly 3. But you don't want to put him in harm's way. You can't prevent injury from happening, and you don't want to guard against it, but at the same point, you don't have to overexpose them. So I expect a play count tonight.
Yeah, what do you guys feel like will be in terms of pressure for a guy like Michael Mayer then? Because if Brock Bowers is potentially out, or say, they do end up playing him and I guess maybe possibly using him as a decoy at times, like what do you think this type of game will be for a guy like Michael Mayer, who obviously, he's been a solid dude for the Raiders. He's been consistent, made big plays, but this is a time for him to also shine on Monday Night Football when everyone's going to be watching, right, Link?
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. And here's the thing. For Michael Mayer, you've been waiting for this chance since you came in the league. I mean, you were a high profile. The Raiders traded up in the second round to get him. You go to Notre Dame. This is the stage you want. I mean, this is what you expect. So you're not going to take it lightly. And more importantly, this is a chance for Michael to really come out of that shadow of Brock Bowers and really make this a 2 tight end team, which I think it can be.
I think Pete Carroll said it perfectly after the game on Sunday when he was asked about having a great 1 and 2 tight end. He said, we don't have 2s. We have 1s. And that's the reality of it. Michael Mayer is a number 1 tight end on the majority of the teams across the league, almost all of them except for this one, right? Because Brock Bowers is that guy. But Big Mike could play that role. So, yeah, this is the moment that he's been waiting for. This is the moment where he can break out. His first year, they would go to him every once in a while, and then they go away from him. And then last year, he stepped away for personal reasons. But now is the time in year 3 where he can actually show, hey, I can be that guy. It's not going to look the same as Brock Bowers because they're 2 different players, but it's going to be very effective. So I do think you're going to see a heavy dose of Big Mike tonight. And I'd even throw in Ian Thomas. Ian Thomas is an 8-year vet. He's a guy that's been there, done that. He knows how to block. He knows how to catch. I think that a lot of people are sleeping on him. He had a really good training camp as well. So I would be surprised if I didn't see all 3 of those tight ends out there at some capacity tonight.
Yeah, and that was kind of my next follow-up question. If we would probably see a lot of Ian Thomas. What have you guys just heard about Ian Thomas in terms of, how ready he is and how capable he is to play in a big game like this? Q?
He's ready. I mean, he's ready. He's, like I said, he's an 8-year vet, and a lot of people don't really know him because he was injured a few times there in Carolina, but he could play. And like I said, he was targeted quite a bit during training camp. And so that's when I started noticing that, hold on, man. This guy, all he is just finds a way to get open, and he's not a guy that a lot of people are paying attention to because he's not Big Mike. He's not Brock Bowers. He's not Jacoby Myers. So he finds a way to get open, but he's a really good blocker as well. So I think that's going to help. I think that he'll be ready to go. I mean, again, when you're an 8-year vet, Monday Night Football is fine for you. You're good.
Thinking of it strategically, you can imagine what Chip Kelly and this offensive staff could have at their disposal when nobody's expecting Ian Thomas to be in the equation.
Right.
More importantly, even if you're Gino Smith and you're back there, then you're looking at, an unfamiliar number that's not been out there for all the time, but you have another opportunity to get a playmaker who's probably going to be open a couple times.
Yeah, for sure. And I think we also have to talk about a guy like JPJ that's going to be out. That's huge for the O-line, right? You have a guy like Alex Kappa, and Alex Kappa was injured for a lot of training camp. And then also, I think he missed 2 preseason games. But, he was able to get some burn as well. What do you think it means to not have a guy like JPJ on this O-line? Because we talk about so much how it's about continuity and you hope those 5 guys can always stay healthy, but that's just not the case because JPJ obviously dealing with a concussion. And, we all know sometimes there's really no timeline for that. And so what does it, mean to not have him on the field, Link, but also have a guy like Alex Kappa stepping in?
Well, just as I gave this offensive line a little bit of praise for what they were able to do last week in New England and getting pushed on the line of scrimmage, now you're taking a couple steps back because you don't know what you have. You have an unproven product right now. And the thing is that these guys are going to have to learn to play together. And look, it's a good problem to have when you have someone who's capable like Kappa who can step in, who's played the position before, obviously, and has been in the league before. So you're not relying on a rookie or someone who's brand new, but it is a step back because I've said all along, guys, this offensive line has got to learn how to play together. There's been spots and parts and pieces put in throughout the season so far, and it's only a short time into the season. They've got to learn to play together. Now with this concussion issue, it's going to be a step back. You got to take a step back. Hopefully they have a strong outing tonight.
That's the biggest thing for me is that we've been talking about the offensive line in training camp, and I kept saying I want them to find their starting five just so they can get those reps.
Yep.
Just so they can get that continuity. And then they did. And it's funny because at one point in training camp, it was Kappa with the ones one day, JPJ with the twos. Then it was JPJ with the ones, Kappa with the twos. And then Kappa goes down. So it was just all JPJ. So they built on that continuity. Now all of a sudden they've got to try to get there again, right? They've got to try to figure it out and mix him back in there with the rest of the guys. And I asked him in the locker room on Saturday, how does that go as far as, just you were behind on reps and you missed some time in camp and you missed some preseason games. And, he's going to feel confident. But as Lincoln said, they're always going to feel confident. They're never going to say like, hey, I'm not ready for this. So, it's one of those, it's just going to be reps. That's all it is. So hopefully he gets comfortable sooner rather than later. But it's unfortunate after one game, your starting right guard is down.
And it makes sense now why they did what they did in training camp, splitting the time between the two. They kind of foresaw there was going to be an issue with JPJ. This is something that's been following, unfortunately, since he came in the league. This is one of the reasons why he was docked down coming out of Oregon in the draft. They were worried about concussions in his future. So the Raiders have somewhat tried to plan for this. Now it's up to Alex Kappa to go out there and play well under a situation where you're going up against a pretty good defense as a whole. It's going to be a wonderful try for him, and we'll see how he does tonight.
And there's nothing that you could do about concussions. I mean, it's one of those you can't wake up and say, "Hey, man, I feel great. I'm going to be good to go." I mean, you've got to pass the concussion protocol. So it just kind of is what it is. As soon as JPJ popped up on the injury report with a concussion, I already started planning for Alex Kappa. I already knew that, okay, that means Kappa's in. There's no way on a Friday, all of a sudden he's going to be ready to go on Monday. So there you go.
In terms of how confident you guys are with this O-line, I thought you guys felt like in that first game, they also made some adjustments in the second half. But are you guys confident with this O-line knowing that when it comes to depth, it is kind of thin? You have a guy like Alex Kappa coming in. He's a veteran. But do you guys feel confident with the O-line tonight against a Chargers defense, Q?
I mean, you're only as confident as they're going to go, right? I mean, it's like you really don't know. There are moments where they look pretty good. There's other moments where, they were getting overwhelmed against New England. So it's all about adjustments. It's all about, the leadership of Colton Miller, hoping DJ Glaze comes along. But it's a young offensive line anyway. I mean, these guys haven't played together for very long. The guy who's the veteran is Colton Miller. Dylan Parham is playing a little bit better. I think that he stepped up. But at the same time, it's going to be a big test, right? I mean, I don't think that there's a ton of confidence in them just yet because it's unproven, especially now that you add Alex Kappa in. It's just kind of one of those wait and see type situations.
I'll say for all three of us, I'm worried.
Okay, there you go.
I'm worried.
That's fair.
When we came into the season, we had already talked about the fact is that they're very thin. They are extremely thin at experience and overall depth on this offensive line. And now that you already have one of your starters down, and this is week 2, I'm worried. There's an unproven product. Yep. Alex Kappa, in this collection, this offensive line playing together is an unproven product. We don't know what we're going to have. So, yes, I'm worried.
Yeah, and I think for this game, whoever wins the line of scrimmage is probably going to win the game. That's how it usually goes.
Yeah.
So it's going to be interesting to see how that O-line looks without a guy like JPJ. But I think the positive that you guys said is Alex Kappa got some burn, and that's why they kept on switching these guys during training camp. And, there was so much talk about what was going to happen with the O-line. The Raiders found their 5 guys, but, just in case, they had a little bit of insurance with how they were switching guys on that line. Landon Roberts, guys, a little bit of a scare in week 1. They had Tommy Eichenberg come in. I thought he did a really good job, but Landon Roberts participated in practice, the full practice on Saturday. So that's really good news. We know how much the defense needs him, but to hear that he went through full practice, that probably means he is going to start. Like, what does that mean for a Raiders defense that is going to try to slow down this Chargers offense?
I mean, they got their veteran linebacker back. They got their green dot back, right? If he wasn't going to go, then it was going to be Devin White that was going to wear the green dot. So I've been asked many times who's going to be. We asked Patrick Graham, and he didn't really give us the sauce. So the answer is the special recipe. He didn't really give us that answer, but kind of let us know in his own little way that it was going to be the veteran. So Devin White was going to get the green dot if E-Rob couldn't go. But talking to E-Rob in the locker room, just off to the side, he looks good. He's ready. He's fired up for tonight. He knows it's going to be a challenge, and especially the fact that the Chargers came out and looked completely different against the Chiefs than most people thought that they were offensively. The way that they attack, they came out throwing the ball as opposed to running the ball, which is a staple of Jim Harbaugh's offense. So he knows it's a chess match that they're going to be playing. So he's looking forward to it. But yeah, getting them back is a big deal.
What you need to look for tonight is that the Chargers are going to get back to their old formula for success which is run the football with Najee Harris. And they're going to try to do is spread out the Raiders to get them in nickel, because they're hoping that within nickel that you would have the smaller Devin White or Landon Roberts are going to be up there as your linebackers. You can run the ball against them undersized, especially with our defensive line not having a whole lot of beef at the defensive tackle spot. So they're going to try to push that. That's what they're going to try to get into. Now, the working factor for the Raiders is the fact that you can have Jamal Adams, you can have Devin White, you can have those different combinations in there for your nickel. Now, it does promote a little bit of a liability in the pass game, but that's something that you could try to overcome with tight man coverage, or maybe even get pressure on the quarterback. So my point in all this, guys, is that we're not too far from what the Chargers like to do, and they're going to do. And one of the keys that we'll talk about later, I'll tell you exactly why it's going to be important to maintain that time of possession in this game.
Yeah, and as for the Chargers, a couple of guys out. They have defensive back Elijah Molden dealing with a hamstring injury. He was limited in practice Thursday, and he did not participate on Friday. And then you got Denzel Perryman, who Raider Nation, we know about him, right? Dealing with an ankle injury. He did not participate Thursday or Friday. And then Delshon Phillips, the linebacker, dealing with a toe injury. He did not participate Friday. Limited on, he didn't participate on Thursday. He was limited on Friday. And then you got cornerback Tarheeb Still dealing with a calf injury for the Chargers. He was limited Thursday, but he did participate in full practice on Friday. So they've got some questions as well, a little bit more in terms of who you're most I guess not having Denzel Perryman is going to open up a lot of things in the middle, if I'm not mistaken. So, not having him would be a pretty big loss because he didn't participate Thursday and Friday. Like, how would the Raiders try to take advantage of this cue?
Yeah, I mean, he's officially out. So that is a good thing for the Raiders trying to attack this defense. And you're exactly right. Attack the middle of the field. I mean, Denzel is a very sound tackler. I mean, it's funny. He's always been told that he's not great in coverage, but he does make plays in coverage. So, him not being there is going to be a big deal. And that's where I think, and go back full circle. That's where I think that a guy like Big Mike could start to really eat and, live in the kind of the middle of the field, be a security blanket for Gino Smith, get hit early and often, and not have to worry about Denzel Perryman kind of being that guy, that general in the middle of the field. So, yeah, I do think that that's going to be the way that you see this Raiders team attack. Not to mention Denzel, with him being a really good tackler, he's really good at stopping the run. I think this opens up the game for Ashton Genty as well to be able to run between the tackles and not have to worry about Perryman being there to bring the boom.
My quick kiss is the fact that whoever wins time of possession in the rushing battle wins tonight.
Yep.
That's what it comes down to, because I think both offenses have the ability of keeping the ball away from the opposing offenses, and then each offense can be dangerous in their own spot, but you're not playing catch up. If you're able to keep pace and will control the line of scrimmage and control the time of possession, I think he could bode very well for the Raiders, but that's going to be a big key. Who's going to play that chess match? How are you going to be able to get your runs in? Because both teams are going to look to take away the run.
Yeah, and we're going to be getting into the keys of victory next, coming up later in the show as well. We're going to be talking about battle for first place in the AFC West and how there's a lot riding on this game. And then later on in the show, in the final segment, Q and Link are going to be answering your questions. So if you have any questions for the guys, please drop them in the chat and the guys will get to it later. Raider Nation, we do appreciate you. Remember, if you're listening to this on the audio side, if you have any questions or comments, you can always drop them after. Hop on YouTube, leave some comments for the guys as well, and we might be able to get to it on the next episode. You're listening or watching the Raiders Squad Show, and we'll be back coming up with the keys to victory for the Raiders against the Chargers. This episode is brought to you by Prize Picks, the daily fantasy app where making the right call can actually pay off. You and I make decisions every day, but on Prize Picks, being right means cashing in. With football back, Prize Picks is the simplest and fastest way to get in on the action. Just pick more or less 2 or 6 player projections, and you can turn your takes into real prizes all in less than 60 seconds. So if you think Ashton Genty is going to have more than 60 yards, you hit that, and you could be winning some prizes. Download the Prize Picks app today and use code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONNFL for $50 in lineups after your first $5 play. Prize Picks, it's good to be right. Welcome back, Raider Nation. Remember, if you like the content, make sure to hit that like and subscribe button. You can also follow us on our social media channels. And as I mentioned before we took a break, we're also on the audio side. So if you got a couple of minutes, leave a rate and review. Game day is officially here. We've been waiting for it. Link, you mentioned earlier, we had to wait the whole entire weekend, right? We're anticipating this, but the news is that it is a battle for first place, which we are going to get into in the next segment. However, we got to talk about the keys to victory, because this is a Chargers team that took down the Chiefs, and the Chiefs 0-2, right? Let's just mention that for, it feels good to say that. But I will say that, keys to victory is going to be important in this game. And I want to know for you guys, what are the keys to victory for the Raiders beating the Chargers at Allegiant Stadium? Q, will go with you first.
Well, I think that, Link said it best is the trenches, right? And the offensive line. And just looking at the offense, and I said it on the podcast today, that they're not going to be able to go for 56 yards, right? They can't run for 56 yards and think that they're going to win that game and put it on just the arm of Gino Smith. It's got to be much more balanced. So that's what I'm really looking for. I'm looking for a good blend of the run game, the passing game, but the offensive line is going to have to be solid, going to have to open up some holes, for Ashton, going to have to be able to protect, for Geno to be able to get the ball around the yard. For me, it's so important, this offensive line, this game. And again, because I'm paying attention to Alex Kappa, I'm seeing how quickly he can get on the same page with the rest of the guys, and the rest of the guys can get on the same page with him. So for me, my biggest key to victory is going to be that offensive line playing solid and having a balanced attack when it comes to rushing and passing.
It was always my purest attention when we played divisional opponents, new season, the first game, you set an attitude.
Mm-hmm.
You wanted to go out there and set an attitude. I'm not soft. I'm not always going to be catching. I'm going to come after you. That's why you have those runs, those statement runs, where you call them and you run them. It might not be the best look, might not always be in a great play, but in the early part of the game, this is where you control the momentum. You put it on your guys up front to make plays on both sides of the ball, offensive and defensively. So this is why I said time of possession is going to be big. I think both teams want to go and establish it, because one, we're going to see each other again. And this division is going to go in a round robin where everybody's going to beat up on each other, in my opinion. This is when you send statements. So I expect this first game to be a physical game. And I say that and saying in this, I'm hoping that time of possession and the rushing yards on the Raiders side, because I think that's the biggest key to win this football game.
And, when you take a look at the last game for the Chargers, like, they had to do a lot of travel, right? You're in Brazil, you come back, you're in LA for a bit. And then I know the flight to LA to Vegas is like hella quick, but I will say that that's still a lot of travel though. Right. And so that's so early in the season. How much do you think that will be an impact in this game, Q?
I don't think it's going to impact it too much, because they've had a couple extra days of rest. And so I think that they're going to be fine. And Lincoln says it all the time, man. These guys, when they travel, they're so well taken care of, right? I think that we look at some of their travel and say, oh, well, this team's got to travel here, this team's got to travel there. And they're taking so good a care of it that they're not really going to be too worried about it. And since they did have a couple extra days of rest, I think that they should just be fine.
They essentially had a mini bye.
Right, exactly.
They essentially they played on Friday against the Chiefs, and then they don't play until Monday night. So they essentially had a mini bye, and they're fine. If you're not rebounding by now, then something
you're
else.
Probably not going to rebound.
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah, for sure. Hopefully they still have some jet lag. That's just me hoping as a Raiders fan, right? But sometimes I feel like too much rest is not the best. So especially for a team that's like ready to go at home, this is their home opener. I wanted to ask you guys about the secondary, because obviously I felt like, last game, Caillou Blue Kelly and, Eric Stokes, they did their things in terms of like taking away the vertical and deep routes. And I thought that was kind of great for the Raiders, because there were so many questions about the secondary. And for this game, you're going to have, Quentin Johnson, you're going to have Keenan Allen. Like, the Chargers have weapons in their wide receiver room. Like, how do you guys think that battle is going to be going tonight? And how dangerous is this wide receiver group for the Chargers, Link?
Very dangerous.
Yeah.
With an experienced quarterback who knows his way around. So what's going to come down to is, first of all, the defensive line's got to be disciplined in the rush lanes. You cannot allow Herbert out the pocket, because he will scramble and run for yards, and he's potentially dangerous on the second level. But this cast of receivers, and especially the way that Harbaugh and his staff uses them, opens up a lot of doors. This is a concern. That's why it's imperative that this rush find a way to get to the quarterback and harass the quarterback, because they can really have their way and pick you apart on the secondary side.
Yeah, one of my biggest keys for this game for the secondary is they got to be stickier.
Yeah.
They got to be stickier than they were in week one against the Patriots. There's way too many times where a Patriots wide receiver was wide open. Now, the Raiders, to their credit, did a really good job of rallying and making the tackle and not letting them get a lot of yards after the catch, but they still allowed them to make the catch. Quentin Johnson, Keenan Allen, Ladd McConkey, they'll get loose. Those guys are big playmakers, especially Quentin Johnson. He's fast. He will have some concentration drops here and there, which is great for the Raiders. So hopefully he'll have a couple of those, but really big playmaker. Obviously, Keenan Allen is old, wily veteran, and I think he's done some really good things for that wide receiving crew, just coming back to the Chargers and being that veteran and kind of showing them the way. And Ladd McConkey's fantastic. So, yeah, they're going to have to be, like Link said, very disciplined when it comes to the pass rush. They're not going to – they can't lose contained. If they lose contained, they're going to lose Justin Herbert. It's going to be a wrap, just like we saw against the Chiefs when Chris Jones tried to be the hero and it didn't work, right? And you just got to stick to what you're supposed to do. Do your job. He didn't do his job, and that's how the Chargers beat him. The Raiders are going to have to be disciplined there, and their coverage is going to have to be a lot stickier than it was.
Whomever's at the nickel tonight, whether it's Darnay Holmes, whomever is at the nickel tonight, is going to have their hands filled with McConkey.
Yep.
Okay, it's just that simple. He's a slot receiver that knows how to get open, and the way these rules are set, he can be a really big advantage. So whoever that nickel person is tonight is going to be grown up pretty quickly in this game.
Yeah, and so Link, you also mentioned earlier you thought Najee Harris was going to get a lot of burn in this one. When you take a look at their running back group, you also got a guy like Amarion Hampton. Do you guys feel like they're going to try to run the ball a lot against the Raiders tonight? And how do you feel about the Raiders' rush defense if they are trying to run the ball against this Raiders defense?
Again, it's going to be a big test, Chantel Q. It's a big test. There's a lot of things that we haven't seen throughout the preseason or just a small sample size of the season. So it's a big test. And I do believe, because it's a statement type of game, especially by these two coaches, I do believe that's going to come in. You want to be physical. You want to be physical. I don't want to pass the ball 60, 75 times a game. I want to go out there and be able to run and have a balanced attack and set a statement. If nothing else, you put it on Monday Night Football so everybody can see we can be a physical team, because that weighs heavier in the latter part of the season, November and December.
I think the strength of this Raiders defense is stopping the run. I think that they're kind of built to stop the run, especially you look at those linebackers, right? They're all guys that we never brag about them in coverage. We never sit there and say that they're going to intercept 4 or 5 passes or break up a bunch of passes throughout the course of the year. But these guys are guys that can get downhill. They can use those block eaters in front of them, and they can make a tackle. Yeah, they're sure tacklers. That's the thing about it. And, if you look at the preseason game number 1 against Seattle and all the missed tackles that they had, and then you go back and look at what they did last week against the Patriots, they really cleaned that up. They did not have very many missed tackles at all. They're good at that. So I think that the run game plays into the Raiders defense. What they want to do is be able to stop the run, make the Chargers one-dimensional, make them drop back, and then a guy like Max Crosby, a guy like Kuntz, Tyree even could pin their ears back and try to get to the quarterback. That's their game plan. Now, are they going to be able to execute it? That's another question. But that's definitely the game plan for sure.
Yeah, and let's focus a little bit more so on the Raiders D-line and the Chargers O-line, because I think there's some great matchups here that can be exploited. And I think one of them is Max Crosby going up against a guy like Trey Pipkins. I think that's an area where Max might eat all day. But on the other side, you got Malcolm Kuntz and Joe Alt. How do you guys think that matchup is going to go, Link?
Well, I think it's going to be an interesting one. I think this is another breakout session for Malcolm Kuntz to probably come out of that shell and show what he had before his injury last year. But look, Alt's no slouch. I mean, I remember his father back in the day, and watching this young man, it reminds me a lot of his same work ethic that his father had. So this is going to be an interesting matchup. Now, when it comes to the other side of Max Crosby, they're going to triple team Max. They're going to double. They're going to make sure he is not the factor, which is smart. It's going to be someone else. I expect a big game out of Butler or Tyree Wilson. I expect a big game for one of those guys to have a big game. And if one of those guys are able to generate 2 sacks, I'm happy with that. Yeah, I think that might lead to a possible turnover. But they've got to have that sort of defining factor. That defensive front has got to get to that pay dirt.
Yeah, there's no doubt. I mean, it's all about pressure on this Patrick Graham defense. So somebody's going to have to get home. All the attention always goes to Max Crosby. And they know that. That's why everyone else has to step up. Even a guy like Jonah Laulu, who's stepped up. Even if they decide to bring some blitzes from other spots, right? They're gonna have to get creative in the way that they rush the passer, but they're gonna have to rush the passer. Like, that's a non-negotiable. If they want to win this game, they've got to have some heat on Justin Herbert. And again, you got to have contain. If you get heat on him, don't get too crazy. Right? Because if you do, he's going to go right around you and going to pick up a bunch of yards. He has no problems getting out there and using his legs.
Yeah, so in that first game, I thought that, I think everyone was looking for the pass rush. They made the adjustments in the second half. How confident are you guys in this pass rush and what we could see tonight, Link?
Well, it's gratifying to see the coaching staff make adjustments. We hadn't seen it on the Raiders for some time. both coaching staffs, offensive and defense, made adjustments for this game, and that's easing my mind going forward, because now you see the coaches aren't afraid to do it. So look, this is going to be a season of learning, especially the first month of this regular season football. We're going to see what the Raiders are about. We're also going to see what their opponents are about, what they bring to the table. This is still a learning process, but as Q and I talked about, and you know this, Chantel, that pass rush has got to get home.
Mm-hmm.
They have got to get there. They have got to get there and find a way to get there within 3 seconds, because this team has the ability to strike and strike fast.
Yeah, and you know what? We focused in on the defense. We are going to focus in on the offense in the next segment. We're going to be talking about a good matchup. Who's going to have the better game tonight? Gino Smith or Justin Herbert? We'll also dive into a little bit of what we want to see from Ashton Genty. And then later on the show, the battle for first place in the AFC West. We'll go around the division a little bit. And then in the final segment, Q and Link will be answering some of your questions. I already see some good questions in the chat. Drop them into the chat, Raider Nation, because the guys are going to be answering your questions. We'll be back on the other side. Remember, hit that like and subscribe button, and thanks for rocking out with us. We'll be back after we hear from our sponsors. This show is sponsored by BetterHelp. We all turn to some funny places for advice, your barista, your barber, maybe even a random stranger in the bathroom. But not everyone is the right one when it comes to real support. That's why BetterHelp is here with over 30,000 licensed therapists and more than 10 years of experience. BetterHelp helps you find your right match. Someone clinically trained and credentialed to guide you through life's challenges. And this is actually really cool because you can set up your appointments all on this app, and you can find someone who is exactly suited for you, and they can match you up with somebody. As the largest online therapy provider in the world, BetterHelp can provide access to mental health professionals with a diverse variety of expertise. Find the one with BetterHelp. Our listeners get 10% off their first month at betterhelp.com/locked-on. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/locked-on. All right, welcome back, Raider Nation. Remember, if you like the content, hit that like and subscribe button. You can also follow us on our social media channels. And if you're on the audio side hearing this, if you ever got some questions or comments, you can always hop on the YouTube channel and you can leave a comment on the latest video, and we can get to it later on in the show, because we will be doing questions with the Q and Link throughout the season. And I already see some good ones there in the chat, so keep them coming. Guys, we, focused in on the defense. Let's focus in on the offense. When it comes to the quarterback matchup, Gino Smith, Justin Herbert, we all saw what they did in week 1. Let's start off with the Raiders, obviously. Let's start off with them first. Gino Smith, his first game with the Raiders, I think a lot of people, I don't want to say were surprised, but I think they were thrilled with his performance, right? Because you had a guy that was throwing for over 300 yards, and he was feeling it, right? He was slinging it, throwing it into like sometimes triple coverage, double coverage, which is scary. So you don't want him to do that.
Exactly.
But I think the positive part about that is that he's confident, right? And you want your guy to be that confident when he's making those type of throws. What are your guys' thoughts coming into this game where it's Monday Night Football? There's so much on the line. All eyes are going to be on Gino, and it's only week 2, but it's arguably like, because you can only go by the schedule. It's the biggest game of the year, right? So
the one that's in front of you. Yeah,
right.
Yeah, exactly. So, Link, what do you think it's going to mean for a guy like Gino, and what type of performance do you think he'll have against the Chargers defense that is really good?
Guys, the biggest reward was the fact that he spread it around the 6 different receivers last week. Yep. That's the biggest reward. The reason why is that you're not just zoned in on one person. You have many weapons that you can use, and that's going forward gives these defenses a lot more to prepare for. So that's what I like. I mean, look, I don't know. I didn't follow a lot of Geno Smith when he came out of college. I saw him when he first, came in the league and had his struggles. I always thought he was an accurate quarterback that can make every throw. He's not overly mobile, but he can use his legs to get out of danger. So I think he's the ideal quarterback for what the Raiders need right now as they figure out their next step for the quarterback position. So going forward, I think he's their best option. But there's still a lot of things that we don't know. We've seen him struggle in the past, especially with the elements, which was so surprising last week to see New England had more issues with the elements that they were in rather than Geno Smith, who's been, sort of been following him around his career when people talk about him. So going forward, I like the way that he's spreading the ball around, and I think that bodes well from them moving forward because there's not one true definitive weapon that they're relying on.
Yeah, the big deal was I think Gino Smith gave a lot of confidence to Raider Nation by what he did on Sunday against the Patriots. I mean, because I think a lot of people are like Link. They know who Gino Smith is. They know what he did. I know what he did at West Virginia. I covered him in the Big 12, so I knew he was a hell of a player, but he also dropped around too. Right. And then his career didn't get off to the way it was supposed to. And then he goes to Seattle and he has some success. And so I think we all knew, yeah, he was successful with Pete Carroll in Seattle. But I don't think we all knew exactly what he was going to bring to the table. And for him to be able to spread the ball around, and he even had a little bit of a statement about that this past week at practice when I asked him about that, having confidence to throw it around to a bunch of different guys. He said, wait, I thought they said we didn't have any weapons. I thought they were saying we didn't have any weapons. That goes back to those Patriot reporters that said they didn't need Christian Gonzalez for week 1 because the Raiders didn't have anybody, and then Geno goes out and throws for 360. So I guess he had enough, right? Yeah. So, but he had a little bit of fun with that. But this guy is very businesslike. I mean, we were talking to him about Monday Night Football, and he's like, "It's just another game. It's not something I'm not going to get too hyped about it. I just want to go in there, do my job, handle my business. We're just trying to get another win for Raider Nation." Like, he was very business-like. There was no real laughter. There was no, whatever. No getting praise and enjoy. Just as a matter of fact, he's just ready to go to work. So I think that was refreshing to be able to see that and hear that. And then the way he went out there and played, I think it gives Raider Nation, I know it gives me a lot of confidence that even if a guy like Brock Bowers doesn't happen to go or he's not 100%, he has no problem going to other receivers and getting them involved.
Yeah, and I think he has confidence in his receivers, which means like a guy like Dante Thornton, if Gino is looking at him to make a big catch, a rookie, and he makes that big catch, like that's just going to add confidence to the group. I want to ask you guys about Justin Herbert, because this is a guy that I feel like there's a lot on his shoulders, and there might be a little bit of a chip on his shoulder because he hasn't like really taken that next step. Q, you've talked about this a lot. This is a very important year for a guy like Justin Herbert, right? This is the first national televised game for the Chargers as well. Well, actually, no, they played in that game against the Kansas City Chiefs, and they played very well in that game. But for a guy like Justin Herbert, for this game, how important is it to also have, continuity for him where he has back-to-back really good games? And what do you think he's going to see from this Raiders defense?
Yeah, I think this is a big year for Justin Herbert. I don't think it's just a big game. I think it's a big year because he is a guy that had a lot of expectations coming out of Oregon. He is a guy that's a part of the $50 million a year plus club, right? And so when you make that kind of money, when you're that kind of high-profile quarterback, at some point you've got to get it done in the postseason. He hasn't had that success yet, so he's got to get to the postseason, right? They're obviously off to a good start, 1-0. He looked really good. I thought he played one of his better games against Kansas City in that Week 1 performance, but now he's got to continue to stack it. He's got the talent. There's never been a question about the talent, the arm strength, the legs. I mean, if you're building a quarterback in a lab, if I'm going out back right here and building one right behind Studio Q, I'm building a guy that looks very similar to Justin Herbert. But now he's got to go and do it. He's got to go and continue to stack it and have that postseason success. I think that this whole year is big for him. I think he knows that. And I think Jim Harbaugh knows that as well. And you saw that game plan that they had against Kansas City. It wasn't what most of us expected to see.
The most visible position on a football team is a quarterback. Okay. And in my impression, the quarterbacks get all the shine when everything goes right, get all the blame when everything goes wrong. Justin Herbert can go out there and throw for 4 interceptions, and everybody's going to look down their nose like, oh, you need to replace him, or we got to move on, do something different. Since he's been in the league, it has always been on his shoulder to take this team to the next step. This organization hasn't really achieved much collectively, but to take them to the next step. He was their promise. When they went out and got Harbaugh, the sort of philosophy changed. The skew really changed. Okay, now we're going to use Harbaugh's brilliant mind to take him to the next level. I agree with you and Q about this being an important year for him to show whether or not he is a proven commodity that can stay with the Chargers. You can build behind him. But here's the thing. It's the same thing that we had with Derek Carr. You only have so much time before you got to get it right, because there are other teams that aren't sitting around waiting for you to happen. For so long, the Kansas City Chiefs have controlled this division. Yep. That's why it was such an important game. And in Brazil, for the way the Chargers opened up, now the Chiefs are at the bottom. The Raiders are just kind of around, and we didn't do anything last year. Along with the Broncos lost, you have a chance for first place. But you got to go out there and beat your division foes, which you didn't do last year. So this is a big test not only for the Raiders, but also for Justin Herbert, to your question, Chantel, going forward, because this is an opportunity to make his shine and prove his worth, prove his value for that $50 million club that you're talking about every day.
Yeah, it's a big game for every quarterback in the NFL, every game. But I think for this game in particular, Gino and Herbert both want to shine in this game, and rightfully so in a divisional matchup. Now, when we take a look at the offense, we also got to take a look at Ashton Genty. And Link, you'll like this. You know, you can't have a run game without the O line, right? So
know that.
yeah. So for a guy like Ashton Genty, and he heard so much criticism only from that one game. This is a game where nationally televised, a lot on the line. People want to see a lot from him because he was a high draft pick. Like, what do we think we're going to see from a guy like Ashton Genty, and how much will that O-line affect his game tonight? Because we don't really know how it's going to look, right, with Alex Kappa in there.
Well, you answer the second question first. It's all about the O-line. Yep. If O-line doesn't do their job, and Ashton Genty or whomever's back there running the football doesn't go anywhere. But it's also being realistic and practical for us being in the second game of the regular season, guys. Why are we really trying to put pressure on this young man?
Right.
He just came in the league. I mean, what are we expecting? You expect him to be a Saquon Barkley? I mean, is that what I don't know where you go, right now, but it's too early to tell. There's not enough sample size until the Raiders figure out what's up front. We don't know what we have him back.
Right. Yeah. Well, the biggest issue is, and even when the Raiders drafted him number 6 overall, we all knew the reason why people were excited about him is because we just saw Saquon Barkley rip off 2,000 yards. Exactly. We just saw Derrick Henry go for 1,900 plus yards. We saw Josh Jacobs go for 1,300 plus yards. Hey, running backs are cool again, right? Hey, everyone wants a running back. Well, they never were not cool, right? They've always been a big part of the game plan, so you got to have one. But now when you get drafted number 6 overall, the expectations are going to be so high. Everyone thinks he's going to have to go for 100 yards a game. He's going to be offensive rookie of the year. I mean, you fill in the blank. That's what they're saying about him right now. For Ashton, he's just got to let the game come to him. He's got to not try to do too much, just play his game. The problem is you get out of sorts when you start trying to do too much. When every time you touch the ball, you're trying to make it a home run, right? You don't have to do that. Singles and doubles are good. We could play small ball, right? Small ball is fine. Small ball scores runs, right? I mean, it's fine. All you've got to do, going back to Link's point, time of possession. Right. And what I did love about his game, what I loved about Sunday was the fact that he did carry the rock 10 times in the fourth quarter. That means that the Raiders are on track of where they need to be. If you see the majority of Genty's carries tonight in the second half in the fourth quarter, the Raiders are going to probably win that game. Right. If you see him carry the rock a lot in the first half and then all of a sudden in the second half, you don't really see number 2, you don't see him carrying the rock. That means that the Raiders are probably playing catch up. Right. So you don't want that to be the case. You want Genty to be able to have a balanced attack. But the more carries he gets late in the game, the better for the Raiders.
Derek, Saquon, Josh all have all-pro offensive linemen in front of them.
Yep. Simple.
Pretty damn offensive lines.
Yep.
It's just that it's an easy equation.
Yep.
This is not rocket science.
Right.
I stayed at Holiday Inn Express once, so I'm not that smart. This is not rocket science. It's not that hard.
And the reality of it is, Chantel, 44 yards is what Genty got after contact last year, or last week, and he ended the game with 38 yards. But he had 44 yards after contact. So that tells you all you need to know. Offensive line's got to put in more work than they did week 1.
Yeah, I feel like it's tough for a guy like Genty because everybody wants to see him just explode on the field, but it's going to come with time. Let's talk a little bit about the wide receiver group in this game going up against the Chargers secondary, because the Chargers secondary has some names, like they have Tarheeb Still, who of course was on the injury report, but he did practice in full on Friday. You got Cam Hart, you got Derwin James Jr., you got Dante Jackson. For the wide receiver group, obviously, I feel like Jacoby Myers has to have a big game every game. Like we just talked about pressure, right? Like he's one of those guys looking for that contract. But when you take a look at the wide receiver room, who's going to have to step up tonight in this game against this Chargers secondary, Hugh?
I mean, honestly, I think it's a collective, to be honest. I mean, Jacoby's going to be Jacoby, right? I feel like he's going to find ways to get open because, well, that's just what he does. I think they're going to continue to work that relationship with Dante Thornton. Gino told me, he's like, hey, if I had thrown a good ball to Dante, he scores. It wouldn't have been a sliding catch and a first down. He would have scored. He said, but I had some heat on me, so I didn't get to set my feet. He believes in that relationship. You saw him get Trey Tucker involved early for the first touchdown. I think he's going to have an opportunity to throw the ball around the yard. I think Jack Besh, you'll see him. He had one catch for 23 yards, and I think it went for 15 yards or something, and then he picked up the rest after the yak yards. He's a tough dude. That is one guy that a lot of people don't know, that he's just physically tough. So when he catches the ball, it's funny. He may kind of somewhat look like Brock Bowers out there when he makes the catch. I don't think he's quite as fast as Brock, but just his pure strength and his physicality that he brings to the table is very Brock Bowers-like. So I think the Besh gets involved. Thornton gets involved. Jacoby is Jacoby, and Tucker. They've got weapons. That's why I never thought that a veteran wide receiver was needed. I mean, you only got one ball. Right? Where are you going to go with this? So I think that they're going to be just fine. I think all these guys collectively, continue to eat, and Geno has no problem throwing on the ball.
Thornton's going to have one catch plus 25, and he's going to score 2 touchdowns tonight.
Okay, so bet on that, Raider Nation. You just got the inside scoop there. I'm going to make my parlay and put that on the parlay. Thank you, Link.
I just told you. That's why I'm
talking about.
I love that. Guys, you just mentioned Dante Thornton Jr. I want to ask you guys, who's going to be the X factor in this game? This is not something that I put in the email because I wanted to ask you guys on the spot. Who's going to be the X factor in this game tonight, or who do you guys want to be the X factor? Q, we'll go with you first.
That's a good question. X factor. I'm gonna go with Dante Thornton. I'm gonna go with Dante Thornton because he does have that big play ability, right? He's that guy that he can stretch the field, but he doesn't necessarily have to just stretch the field, but he has that. And so for that, the defense, especially a guy like Derwin James, is always going to have to understand that that's there and understand his assignments. So he might open something up. He might not even get the ball, but because he's running a go route, it opens up something underneath for someone else, like a Besh or a Jacoby or Big Mike or something like that, to be able to have a big play. So I'm going to say that Dante Thornton, his size, his speed, is that X factor on this Raiders offense.
Tyree Wilson's going to have 2 sacks. But on the offensive side, I think Michael Mayer is going to come up big in the red zone.
Yep.
I think they're going to spend a lot of time in the red zone, and the Raiders have got to score touchdowns.
Yep.
This is not a game where you can go back and forth with field goals to play special teams. You've got to score touchdowns. So red zone is going to be big tonight, and I think Mayer's going to come in big in the red zone.
It's so funny, Chantel. I have my little notes that I have written out here. I have keys to victory.
I can't read that.
And I know you can't, but I literally just highlighted what he said. Touchdowns, not field goals, was one of my big keys right there. That's spot on, though. That's why I brought that up, because touchdowns, not field goals.
Absolutely.
You're going to have to score touchdowns. And there's been times where the Raiders have struggled so much in the red zone. They did a good job last week, but they've got to continue to build on that. They've got to get really creative. Chip Kelly, I do believe in his process, and what he does as a play caller is going to set them up for success. But it's got to be, when you see Cash Money Carlson out there, you want him kicking extra points, not necessarily field goals. Field goals will help extend the lead, but they're not going to win the game against a team like Kansas City. That's all that's going to do, or not Kansas City, the Chargers. All that's going to do is allow them to hang around, and possibly steal it at the end.
It's been my impression that since this became a defensive-minded team, it's gotten away from offensive being aggressive. And when they get on the plus side of the field, there's not a whole lot of times where you see them really pushing the gas down to score touchdowns. And that's why they've struggled, not only in short yardage goal line, but even the plus side of the field, just coming up with field goals. I thought for times they've been complacent with just accepting, we can get 3 out of it now that we cross the 15. No. You got to score touchdowns, and you got to get in the right frame of mind to score touchdowns. You got to have the attitude. Once we come over here, we're used to walking away with 6s and 7s. You can't do that if you're playing complacent.
I got one more, too, going back to your whole X factor. Now that I had a couple seconds to even think about it, I think Daniel Carlson can be the X factor. And what I mean by that, not necessarily field goals or extra points, but the dynamic kickoff. I think that's going to be a big factor. He's got to continue to work on mastering this kickoff. We saw on Sunday, we saw him kick a bad ball, and they end up getting the ball at the 40-yard line. Like, you can't do that. You can't kick the ball into the end zone either, because if it's a touchback, it goes out to the 35. So you don't want them to start there. You've got to be the master of kicking that ball almost like a I guess a wedge in golf. I'm not really a golfer, but just one of those where the placement is perfect and you put it somewhere where the Chargers have to return it.
Yeah, 1 or 2 yard line.
Right. And then you've got to put the onus on the kickoff coverage team to go make a tackle. But you don't want them starting at 35. You sure don't want them starting at the 40. You start at the 40, you got 1 completion, 2 completions, you're already in field goal range. So I think that could be a big factor. If he can continue to work on his placement on kickoffs, that's going to end up going and working in the Raiders' favor.
Good point.
Yeah, and special teams might be huge in this game, especially in a game that I feel like could be very close tonight. And it sounds like it might be a kind of a good offensive game for both teams as well. I'm going to rock with Trey Tucker because I thought he played great in that first game, and I think Gino will be looking for him as well when it comes to making some big catches. Coming up on the other side, Raider Nation, the guys are going to be talking about the battle for first place in the AFC West. We'll go around the division a little bit, and then questions and comments for Q and Link. Drop them in the comments because we will be getting to them in the final segment. Keep it locked here, Raider Nation. You're watching or listening to the Raiders Squad Show. Are you still paying full price for gas? Stop leaving money behind. Get real cash back every time you fill up with the free Upside app. Simply download the free app, Upside, in the App Store or Google Play right now and start earning cash at the pump today. Use my limited time promo code TOUCHDOWN and get an extra 25 cents back per gallon on your first fill up. You can make up to $300 a year just from buying the gas you already needed. At first, I thought it was way too good to be true, but it's totally legit. Real people are getting paid just to make their daily commutes, and you can too. Plus, you can cash out anytime to your bank account, PayPal, or even an e-gift card for Amazon or other brands. Don't let this offer drive on by. Download the free Upside app now using my limited time promo code TOUCHDOWN for a limited time 25 cent per gallon bonus. That's a promo code TOUCHDOWN. And of course, offers vary by user and location. Go to upside.com for terms and conditions. All right, not this again, guys, All right, there we go. There was actually a comment, Raider Nation. They're like, we need to get Ari in here. He's better with technology.
Oh no, that's not cool. No. Chantel, you're doing a wonderful job.
I always say Ari is AI generated anyway. So
oh my God, he's too good. He's too good. But welcome back.
Exist.
Yeah, welcome back, Raider Nation. If you like the content, hit that like and subscribe button. You could also follow us on our social media channels. Now, coming up later in the show, Q and Link are going to be getting to some of your questions, guys. I want to talk about the battle for first place in the AFC West, because I really think that it's surprising that the Chiefs went 0-2, but when you take a look at their schedule, tough. I think people thought they'd win that first game in Brazil. Chargers surprised a lot of people. And then you're playing the defending champs, and that's a close game where, the Chiefs tried to make a comeback late. It didn't happen. And then the Broncos coming into this year, I thought defensively, they're going to look really, really scary. Bo Nix looked really good in that second game, I felt. But the Broncos are 1-1. And now we're sitting in week 2, and the Raiders have a chance to be first place in the AFC West. How important are these divisional games, and how important is this game tonight? Just take a lead in that division, Q.
I mean, they're always huge. Divisional games, you got to win your division, right? We know that. But, I mean, yeah, this is a huge game for the Raiders in particular to prove to themselves who they can be, prove to their fans who they can be, right? I mean, again, Allegiant Stadium has been very busy this weekend. They had the Canelo fight, and it was 70,000 people plus there. And there's a lot of people in town. A lot of people spend a lot of great money to get out to these games and these events, and the Raiders need to reward the fans. The Raiders need to reward Raider Nation for their faithfulness, for their blood, sweat, and tears that they put into backing their team and spending the money to come out of town and come into town and support. They've got to show who they could be, and that, this is the right staff that's in place. Pete Carroll does have the right plan, and this team is going to go win a lot of games, like he said. Like that was his goal. Hey, we're going to go win a bunch of games. All right, we'll start it in this one. You have an opportunity to play a division opponent, one that's a built-in rivalry. You guys are 6-6 against each other. Heads up, Pete Carroll and Jim Harbaugh. Pete Carroll's 74th birthday is today. So, I mean, what better way to have a birthday party than go out and win this game on Monday Night Football?
Every year we come into this type of work that we do and say, oh, where the Raiders are going to be. How good are they going to be?
Yep.
Well, I've always said you never know how good you are until you play against someone. You've got one game right now. One game, the New England Patriots. The Raiders were fortunate enough to come away with the win, travel back home. But now you're getting into the division where you win a big 0 last year.
Yep.
Playing against a team that, yes, you do know well, but also knows you well. So this is going to be an old-time rivalry that's being reestablished by Pete Carroll obviously joining the Raiders, and we got Harbaugh from last year, but still, this is that renewed rivalry between those two coaches. I don't really pay too much in it because coaches coach, players play. They're not out there on the field, so Harbaugh or Carroll's not going to take any snaps. But anyway,
he might want to though.
Well, there's no doubt about it. But I say that to say this: this is so early in the part of the season, as I've said many times on our platforms, that I'm going to know more about this team after the first month of football. Mm-hmm. This is one of those collections. This is one of the times where I take that sample and I say, okay, you guys played like this against the Chargers. Are you ready for divisional football? I'm hoping that the Raiders can be respectful this season when it comes to the division, because it's embarrassing to go over.
Yeah.
But there's still a lot of work they have to do, and they're going up against probably, in my opinion, collectively the best division of football.
Yeah, the minimum they have to do is go 500 in the division. The minimum they have to do, and it starts tonight, right? I mean, again, go out there and make a statement. Everyone's been saying that, It's the Chiefs, Chargers, Broncos division. The Raiders are a couple years away. Well, prove them wrong.
Yeah.
Right? If you want to shut everyone up or change the narrative, go change the narrative. Shut everyone up. It's on you. It's not on me. It's not on Link. It's not on Chantel. It's not on Raider Nation. It's on you. Go out there on the field, handle your business, right? Don't come out in the second half and start playing. You got to play a 4-quarter game. You got to go out there and get pressure on Herbert early. You got to know your keys. You got to play better defense. You got to be able to run the rock. I mean, you've got to go out there and play your game, but it's got to be a 4-quarter game. You can't play a really strong half. With that being said, if you win the coin toss tonight, I would prefer that they defer to the second half. Just saying.
Yes.
I will just throw that in there.
And, it's worth mentioning because we all played sports. There were times when we were younger, we sat there and saw home and away.
Yep.
You assume that you're going to win the home games. This is back up to support Q's point. You want to make Allegiant Stadium that home field advantage. It hasn't happened since Allegiant Stadium's open. The Raiders need to start in the perfect opportunities tonight in the Monday Night Football.
86% of the fans that are ticketed to be at Allegiant tonight are Raider fans. You want that. You want that home field advantage. You want it to be blacked out. Okay, you got it. Raider Nation did their job. I guarantee Lincoln's there enough. He knows it's going to be loud and proud.
Yep.
Even when it's half and half, it's still loud when Raider Nation needs to get loud. It's going to be extremely loud. It's going to be electric. To me, it's going to feel like the same atmosphere that it was in 2021 when they opened up the stadium and Baltimore came in. They opened it up to fans that Monday Night Football game, and that was the first time that any fans were in the stadium because of the pandemic before that. And it was such an electric atmosphere for that Monday Night Football game against the Ravens, which, by the way, the Raiders won. Right, they walked it off in overtime to get that victory over Baltimore. I think it's going to be like that tonight, even more. So, okay, the fans did their job. Now you got to go do yours.
Yeah, I know. I'm still looking for Chargers fans. You got to keep looking for them because they don't show up the way Raider Nation does. I'll say this, guys, in terms of what you've seen from the AFC West, do you guys still believe that the Raiders are maybe the 4th best team? Because I think after tonight, if they beat the Chargers, I think there's a discussion that needs to be had that the Raiders should get a little bit more respect, Q.
I mean, look, the all that matters now is did you go out and play games? Like the rankings, all that. Are you the 4th best team? No, now you are who your record says you are. So if you go out, you win the game, you're 2-0, then you're number 1 in the division right now. And you've got 15 more games guaranteed that you have to go out there and prove who you are. So, the rankings are all good for off-season conversations, power rankings, this, that, and the other. But right now it's all about just game to game, go out there and handle your business. I think this Raiders team could be really good. I see areas that they still need improvement, right? But that doesn't mean that they can't go win games. So I don't really look at where they are in the division anymore. I look at what their record says they are.
If we're a 5th, I'd be tipsy right now.
Right. Hey, well,
don't go on all the ifs right now. It's like this, Chantel. We can sit here and project what this team is going to do. They'd still have to go out and do it.
Right.
And until they do it, we can only look forward to the next game or the next opportunity. You guys, we all saw some bad football this weekend. Yeah. We saw some good football. We also saw some bad football. Yep. I'm hoping that the Raiders put on a show because they're the last show on tonight. So for this weekend. So that's why I say these big ifs, big ifs. I'm feeling a little tipsy.
Yeah. Got to be realistic.
Bottles downstairs. So I'm just saying.
I told you to take a sip before the show. Like, I don't know what was in the cup.
But it wasn't a fit.
All right, guys, let's get to some questions. I thought this was a good one from Jason Hunter. Raider Demon King says, with all the concussion history, I don't think JPJ is going to have a long career. Should we look to draft a guard in the 2026 draft? Either one of you guys can go.
Like, I'll just go ahead and say, anytime you have concussion history, there's always a concern. I mean, I think it's that simple. And look, I had a buddy that covers the Dallas Cowboys really well, and the Cowboys were looking for a center last year when JPJ got drafted. They took him off of their draft board because of his concussion history in school. And when the Raiders drafted him, my buddy called me. He was like, man, that's a hell of a player. But the Cowboys had to take him off their board because of the concussion history. They didn't want to take that chance. There's always going to be that risk with JPJ. And I think that this coaching staff knows that. That's part of the reason why they made the decisions that they made during training camp to move him to guard. And I think it's easier probably, and Lincoln, you could tell me better, it's probably easier to slide in a guy to play the right guard spot than it is to be the general of the offensive line and play the center spot.
There's no doubt about it. And then look here, every year you should add offensive linemen. Mm-hmm. I don't care whether it's a draft, free agency. Every year you should have offensive linemen because there's always going to be turnover. You guys stepping down, guys could change the teams. So you need to add that depth. You need to keep that up. But it might not have to be a priority going forward. And as we're looking to next year's and the upcoming draft, the Raiders still have other priorities before you get to guard. But that's also the reason why they drafted the way they did this past draft.
Well, the other thing about that real quick, Chantel, is that when you have the coaching turnover that the Raiders have all the time, they have different ideologies and plans for what a Raider is, right?
Yep.
So one coach is going to think this is what a Raider looks like. Another coach is going to think another, and they're drafting to try to build. Like, so right now, scouts are scouting for guys that they believe are the Pete Carroll type guys, right? And then all of a sudden, if Pete was gone, it would be another coach. Then that coach might not say, oh, yeah, that's the guy I want. Oh, no, I want someone else.
Yeah. You guys, before we get out of here, predictions for the final score. We'll do this every time we preview a game. What's your guys' prediction? Link, we'll go with you first because I know you've been realistic throughout this whole entire thing. Do the Raiders get the victory tonight? And
Yes,
what's going to be your prediction?
24-17.
Ooh, okay. I like that.
24-17.
I like that score. I was going 24-21. I think it's a lot closer, but I like that we're on the same page with 24. There you go. Maybe that's the theme. In Studio Q, 24 is the theme. We got multiple 24 jerseys, so I'm just saying. And a Ricky Anderson bat, who was number 24. So 24 is our theme.
Yeah, let me just add to that. I think it's going to be 28-24, and the Raiders are going to get the victory. I think the offense is going to look pretty good, and we're going to come back on Thursday, and we're going to be breaking down what we saw. Raider Nation, thanks so much for rocking out with us tonight. Remember, if you like the content, hit that like and subscribe button. Also, you can follow us on our social media channels, and we hope you enjoy the game tonight. We'll be back on Thursday, 7:30 a.m. Pacific time, 10:30 a.m. Eastern time, and we'll be breaking it all down. We hope you enjoy the game tonight. Raiders, let's get this one done, Raider Nation.
All right.
That's how the West was won.
A true story, right?